2:15 a.m. Eastern Ukraine. Dnipro River Bridge. The convoy was already trapped before the first explosion ever happened. For 5 miles, more than 500 Russian vehicles were packed bumper to bumper across a steel bridge never meant to carry that kind of weight. Ammunition trucks, fuel tankers, command vehicles loaded with communications gear. The entire column was pushing south, trying to resupply roughly 2,000 Russian troops positioned near Melitopol and Tukmak. From the Russian side, everything looked secure. Convoy commanders weren't panicking. They had Pantsir S-1 air defense systems deployed along the route, with 30mm autocannons and 57 E-6 missiles ready to destroy anything that appeared in the sky. Above them, Dnipro radar swept the airspace every few seconds, powerful enough to detect even very small objects at long range. The Russians believed they were protected from every direction. What they did not know was that the real threat was not coming from above. It was already there. Directly beneath their wheels, magnetically attached to the steel underside of the bridge, 12 Ukrainian FPV drones had been waiting in silence for 72 hours, and in a matter of moments, they were about to wake up. 72 hours earlier, under cover of darkness, Ukrainian special operations teams had slipped into the area around the Dnipro River Bridge. Their mission was not to destroy the bridge immediately. Their mission was far more dangerous and far more effective. They were there to build a trap so precise that when it finally triggered, it would cripple an entire Russian logistics movement in one blow. The drones they brought were not expensive, cutting-edge military machines. Each one cost roughly $600. At their core, they were modified consumer-grade quadcopters, but fitted with military-grade warheads, specifically PG-7 VL-shaped charges, the same kind of warhead used with RPG-7 systems. Each one had enough penetrating power to cut through about 12 inches of reinforced concrete or tear through most armored vehicles. But the real innovation was not just the explosive payload. It was how these drones navigated. They did not rely on GPS. That meant they could not simply be jammed or misled through standard electronic warfare. Ukrainian engineers had equipped them with onboard LiDAR, laser-based mapping technology that allowed the drones to read their surroundings and move using preloaded 3D models of the bridge itself. No GPS signal, no continuous radio link, no exposed pilot. Once activated, they could orient themselves based on the structure around them. One by one, the operators carefully clamped the drones to the underside of the bridge using magnetic mounts. Then they switched them into sleep mode, completely inert. Minimal battery use, no movement, no signal, just waiting for one encrypted wake-up command. Now all they needed was the right target. And Ukrainian intelligence had already done the hard part. For weeks they had tracked Russian logistics patterns. They knew a major resupply convoy was coming. They knew the route it would take. They knew approximately when it would arrive. From that point on, the mission became a test of patience. 2:13 a.m. The convoy slowed almost to a stop. A bottleneck had formed on the bridge. Too many vehicles were trying to cross too quickly, and Russian logistics began collapsing under its own weakness. One of the critical problems was something embarrassingly simple: tires. Because of Western sanctions, procurement failures, and corruption inside the Russian military supply chain, many of the trucks in service were operating on poor quality tires. Some were civilian-grade models never meant to carry heavy military loads. Under strain, those tires failed, a blowout here, an overheating engine there. In normal traffic, these would be manageable problems. But on a narrow bridge packed with 500 vehicles, small failures become system-wide disasters. The convoy nearly froze in place, vehicles bunched together even tighter. Fuel tankers ended up sitting next to ammunition trucks. Command vehicles became trapped deep inside the column with nowhere to maneuver and no room to escape. It had become the perfect kill zone. Several kilometers away, inside a concealed Ukrainian command post, an intelligence officer watched a live reconnaissance feed from a drone circling high overhead. From above, he could see the entire convoy stretched across the bridge. He could see the thermal glow of the fuel tankers. He could identify the shapes of ammunition carriers. He could detect the electronic signatures coming off the command vehicles. He picked up an encrypted communicator and sent one short message: target in position. Execute. 2:15 a.m. All 12 FPV drones received the encrypted wake-up command at the same time. Internal computers came online. Motors initialized. Onboard LiDAR systems activated, scanning the bridge structure and verifying each drone's exact position. The magnetic clamps released. The drones dropped several feet before their brushless motors spun to life with a low hum, a sound completely swallowed by the noise of more than 500 idling military engines overhead. But they did not attack immediately. Their programming was far more disciplined than that. They moved in tight formation, staying close to the concrete support structures and bridge framework to reduce the chance of visual or radar detection. Their onboard systems armed the PG-7VL warheads, configuring them to detonate 1.1 seconds after impact, just enough delay to penetrate first and explode inside the target zone. Then the drones split into attack groups. 6 were assigned to ammunition trucks, 4 locked onto fuel tankers. The final 2 aligned themselves with the convoy's lead command vehicles. Then something went wrong for Ukraine, or at least it looked that way for a moment. Inside a Pantsir S-1 command vehicle, a Russian lieutenant noticed a faint electronic anomaly on his display. Nothing dramatic, just a flicker, a minor disturbance in the radar return. The sort of thing most operators might dismiss as atmospheric interference or clutter from the heavy concentration of vehicles. But this lieutenant had survived 2 years of war by trusting his paranoia. Instead of ignoring it, he switched the Pantsir from passive monitoring to active radar mode, saturating the area with emissions to sharpen the picture. And that is when the system found something, a small moving heat signature beneath the bridge. The targeting system locked. A 57E6 missile blasted from its launch tube with a burst of flame, screaming downward across the river at over 1,800 miles per hour. It struck a Ukrainian decoy drone. That drone had been activated for exactly this purpose, to force a Russian reaction and expose the defensive systems. The missile exploded in a huge fireball, lighting up the night sky. Burning debris scattered along the riverbank. And on the bridge, chaos exploded with it. Drivers slammed on brakes. Engines choked and stalled. Trucks jackknifed. Horns blared. What had been an orderly 5-mile convoy instantly collapsed into confusion. Radio traffic erupted. Drivers shouted positions. Officers demanded reports. Air defense crews scrambled to find more targets. Red warning lights flashed across Pantsir consoles. A Tor M2 air defense system tried to establish target locks, but the steel bridge structure created so much radar clutter that the system was flooded with false returns. And what the Russians still did not understand was this: destroying that cheap decoy drone was not the real Ukrainian loss, it was the Ukrainians' gain. That single launch confirmed exactly what they needed to know. Russian air defenses were active, alert, and positioned exactly where intelligence had predicted. The trap was unfolding exactly as planned. Instead of rushing the strike, the remaining 11 drones shifted into evasive protocol. Their onboard AI recognized the changing conditions immediately. Air defenses active. Convoy alerted. Threat environment updated. The drones slipped back under the bridge supports, using steel and concrete to mask themselves. One of them, Drone 3, activated its onboard X-band jammer, a compact electronic warfare device designed to flood specific radar bands with interference. Pantsir radar displays went from blurry to complete static. Operators suddenly couldn't see anything. 40 miles to the north, a Russian Beriev A-50 airborne early warning aircraft was orbiting at roughly 30,000 feet. Essentially a flying command center, it carried large radar arrays capable of monitoring huge sections of battlefield airspace. Its Schmel radar picked up unusual heat movement around the bridge, small objects moving at low altitude. The A-50 immediately transmitted top-down targeting data to ground-based air defense units. Suddenly, the Pantsir picture cleared. A new targeting reticle locked onto Drone 9. At nearly the same moment, a Tor M2 system received the targeting feed and launched a 9M338 missile, a weapon specifically designed to kill small, fast-moving aerial targets. The missile accelerated toward the drone at around 1,850 miles per hour, more than twice the speed of sound. Drone 9 reacted instantly. Its AI deployed a countermeasure. From the underside of the drone, a 100-foot fiber optic line unspooled. At the end of that cable, an AN/ALQ-style decoy activated, a device designed to create a larger amplified radar reflection and trick the incoming missile into chasing a false target. The Tor missile veered sharply. 3 seconds later, it detonated in mid-air, destroying the decoy. The real drone survived. At that point, Russian radar crews across a 50-mile radius were focused on the bridge. They knew something was happening. They just still didn't understand what. And then the Ukrainian command operator sent the final order: execute. All 11 remaining drones surged to full power. But this time, they were no longer hiding. They shot upward at maximum throttle, motors screaming at 18,000 revolutions per minute, covering the final 200 yards in less than 6 seconds. The kill phase had begun. Drone 1 reached the underside of the bridge deck, directly below an ammunition truck, carrying 120 mm mortar rounds and 122 mm artillery shells. Its PG-7VL warhead hit reinforced concrete and detonated after the programmed 1.1 second delay. The shaped charge performed exactly as intended. It focused the blast into a narrow superheated jet powerful enough to pierce roughly 12 inches of reinforced concrete. The charge punched up through the bridge deck and into the ammunition truck above. What happened next was catastrophic. The mortar shells and artillery rounds detonated in a violent chain reaction. A fireball rose nearly 70 feet into the air. But Ukrainian planning had anticipated something even more destructive. The blast wave traveled downward as well, striking the river surface 30 feet below. Water does not compress easily, so the energy reflected upward, amplifying the pressure back into the bridge's support structure. The support column, engineered mainly to bear vertical traffic loads, was suddenly hit by massive lateral stress. Steel rebar inside snapped. The bridge shuddered violently. Then 7 more drones hit within the next 1.3 seconds. Drone 2 struck beneath a second cluster of ammunition vehicles, triggering another massive secondary detonation. Drone 3 hit a tanker transporting JP-8 jet fuel. The tank ruptured. Fuel ignited instantly. Fire rolled across fractured asphalt. Drones 4 and 5 slammed into 2 more fuel-carrying vehicles almost simultaneously. Each explosion fed the next, building an expanding inferno. Drone 6 targeted a mobile command post, a specialized vehicle packed with communication systems and tactical coordination equipment. The shaped charge punched through the floor and detonated inside. Everyone in that vehicle died instantly. Command and control for the convoy was gone in a single moment. The final 4 drones hit the bridge's support columns in synchronized sequence. Each blast added fresh lateral stress to structures already damaged by the earlier explosions. Then, at 2:17 a.m., just 2 minutes after the drones first activated, the southern half of the bridge began to fail. It gave way. 40 Russian vehicles plunged into the kill zone. The first to crash was a Ural truck loaded with 82 mortar shells. It dropped nose first into the wreckage below. The impact triggered the entire load at once. The detonation was enormous. That explosion ignited 2 adjacent trucks, each packed with 122 and 152 artillery rounds stacked in wooden crates. The scene became a rolling chain of blasts, fire, collapsing steel, burning fuel, and exploding ammunition. And this is what made the operation revolutionary. Air defense systems are built to detect threats approaching from the outside. Electronic warfare is designed to jam incoming signals. Conventional defense assumes a threat must travel toward the target before it can strike. But Ukraine's method bypassed that entire logic. The drones had been pre-positioned days earlier. There was no approach to track. No flight path to detect. No active signal to jam. The threat did not arrive from the distance. It was already in place. Silent, dormant, invisible, waiting under the target until the perfect moment arrived. The Russians were scanning the sky. They never thought to check beneath their own convoy. That is what makes this tactic so effective. And it fundamentally changes the way drone warfare has to be understood. The danger is no longer only something coming toward you. The danger may already be there, asleep beneath your feet. The technology itself was simple, and that is part of what makes it so dangerous. These were not ultra-advanced military drones built in secret labs. They were modified commercial quadcopters assembled from relatively accessible components. The PG-7VL warheads were based on old Soviet-era designs dating back to the 1970s, originally built for RPG-7 launchers. Proven, cheap, effective, widely available. The LiDAR navigation system was based on technology not far removed from what powers robotic vacuum cleaners, laser-based mapping that builds a 3D picture of nearby space. None of it was exotic, none of it required a vast industrial base, but when combined with accurate intelligence, disciplined planning, and perfect timing, it became devastating. This is asymmetric warfare at its most effective. Simple, inexpensive tools destroying sophisticated, high-value military assets, not by matching the enemy's strength head-on, but by identifying weak points in doctrine and exploiting them without mercy. And the Dnipro River Bridge strike represents something bigger than one successful ambush. It is a preview of where warfare is going. Traditional military thinking still centers on firepower, armor, mass, and maneuver. Tanks, aircraft, artillery, large, expensive systems operated by trained crews. But the battlefield is changing. Increasingly, success comes from information, timing, automation, and precision. Small drones, AI-assisted decision-making, prepositioned assets, low-cost attacks that create strategic damage far beyond their price. The most dangerous weapon is not necessarily the loudest or the largest. It is the one you never see coming. Not the missile. The algorithm, not the tank. The code, not raw firepower. The patience to wait 72 hours for the perfect moment. Russia prepared for a conventional battlefield. It deployed traditional air defenses. It followed standard convoy doctrine. It assumed that numbers alone, 500 vehicles, layered air defenses, radar coverage overhead, would produce security. But it was preparing for yesterday's war. Ukraine was fighting tomorrow's, and in this operation, tomorrow won. Lost beneath all the technical details are the Ukrainian special operations teams who made this possible. Think about what their mission required. They had to infiltrate hostile territory. They had to plant drones beneath a bridge deep in enemy-controlled space. They had to wait 72 hours for the target to arrive. They had to maintain total operational security the entire time. They had to trust the intelligence. And they had to believe that when the moment came, every part of the plan would work exactly as intended. One mistake could have ruined everything. One Russian patrol could have found the drones. One premature activation could have exposed the operation. One technical failure could have collapsed the whole plan. But none of that happened. The placement was precise. The timing was exact. The targeting was disciplined. Every element worked. That was not luck. That was training, nerve, planning, and professionalism. And the message this strike sent to Russian planners was impossible to ignore. Your logistics are vulnerable. Your convoys are targets. Your bridges can become death traps. Every supply route is now a potential ambush. Every choke point is a possible kill zone. Every routine mission can end in disaster. Russia cannot defend everything. It cannot inspect every bridge for hidden drones. It cannot guarantee safe movement for every fuel truck, every ammunition carrier, every command vehicle. And that uncertainty matters, because uncertainty corrodes confidence. It slows operations. It forces commanders to divert resources. It creates hesitation. It makes routine decisions feel dangerous. And warfare is not only about physically destroying the enemy, it is about making the enemy afraid, making them hesitate, making them doubt their own systems. And after Dnipro, Russian logistics officers were absolutely doubting. 2:15 a.m., the convoy thought it was crossing a bridge. In reality, it was driving straight into a trap that had already been waiting beneath it for 3